Good morning. Um, well, I'm back and I'm a day late as usual in doing the alts part two of the May watch list and the 65 that I had yesterday, which I think are now about 68. Um, and yeah, so we've had a bit of a pump on Bitcoin in Asia again. And given I'm actually in Asia time, unfortunately, I'm sleeping too late. So it never pumped in Asia time when I was normally actually awake when I was back in Europe. Um, and now for the last few days or the last couple of weeks, in fact, it's been pumping kind of early in the morning. I'm not really sure what to make of that because um, Korea, this is the BTC Korea pair. Korea isn't really, it's having the same pump, obviously, but it hasn't broken the high, for example, whereas the US dollar pair has. And we've got potentially a swing failure of on the CME pair of this on a weekly high or a monthly high there. So yeah, I'm just watching this like I'm not again trying to actively trade this because I'm trying to keep up on alts at the moment. As far as what we had on BTC from yesterday, obviously we did get a rejection at the arrow that I wanted, didn't come down very far. So I said there was a couple of options that it would hold potentially this red box, which was a 2 hour demand that was support previously, and it came back through that and then flipped that back to support. But ideally, I would have wanted a long entry back down here in 12-hour demand, or at least in the 1 or 2 hour on top of it. Um, I did have a possibility of there's a 4 hour supply in here. Actually, I've deleted it, which I shouldn't have done because it hasn't quite taken out the high yet. So I'll put that back quickly, or at least put the level back. Um, so yeah, this was a 4 hour supply. Got it in the right place, a little bit higher. That I was potentially looking for a short if it came back to this, but I didn't reset the alert, and obviously now we've come like very high in that zone. And then the next zone above was this 2 day supply and possibly taking out the next. So there's kind of two significant levels, or there's a few significant levels, in fact, that it could take out to take liquidity. But like my preference tends to be taking out liquidity into a zone, so I'd probably look a little bit higher. But then there are quite a few walls at 100K as well, so we shall see. I mean, I said before, this while this was looking fairly ugly on Monday and Tuesday, or at least the first part of Tuesday, it did hold 5 day demand. It had made a new 5 day demand. It also had a 3 day in here. Plus, it was holding this. You can see sort of a few different red boxes as the base of this consolidation. So it held that area. Hence, we got the extra push. It didn't give a proper short trigger for a breakdown. This was uh, like a what do you call it? A high risk, non-confirmed possible short entry. Um, yeah, so obviously still holding that upward structure, but not exactly strong. So unless this kind of does do something significantly stronger later today and or holds this new 8 or 12 hour, but we'll see. I mean, it's very hard to say when Asia because if Asia pumps, then quite often London, New York can reverse it. So we shall see. And like yesterday we had the Asia pump. And then we had London just kind of held it up, and then New York dropped it back down again, I think. And then Asia's pumped it again. So I guess we need to see what's going to happen. Um, and the indices are still also very much in that sideways consolidation. I'm going to have a look at those in a minute. ETH are basically the same. So obviously, so neither of these came down to the long entries I wanted on Monday, Tuesday. I had the pump yesterday, which went very nicely into my level for the short. This did come back down again. I hadn't set the alert because I was busy doing other stuff yesterday. But again, I mentioned in the video that this you could look for longs on this 1 hour, 2 hour demand down here. So it did come back down quite nicely into there. And I did reset this alert because this is a weekly supply here. So it has already had a wick into it. And obviously it's a large zone. So while the arrow's at the open of the zone, obviously it can go all the way up here. So there's various levels to look at inside, but just in case we got a reaction right off the level, I'd reset the alert on that. And locally, there's also this 2 hour in the green, which was similar to the 4 hour that we had in Bitcoin. Yeah, so we're getting a bit of a reaction now, but obviously it's early days. The candles are looking a bit weird because I think BitMEX has just lost 15 minutes of data or something like that. Not too much and not significant. Yeah, this 4:45 candle um, oops, is a bit dodgy. Um, so yeah, just see what kind of reaction we get here. I haven't drawn in all the lower time frame zones yet. I think there's nothing new. Bitcoin was very close to making a 2-day demand, but didn't, not quite. Um, Move that 11, and now it's actually 2 levels in there. Um, so yeah, and one of the things I'd said on these is, maybe we're going to get this 3 hits to the high, which is a common pattern for Bitcoin as well. So again, like I wasn't really counting the first one, but that being the first hit, the second hit, maybe this is the third hit before we get the reversal. So, but again, just watching, like I don't want to take longs particularly in here. I've said that multiple times. It's monthly supply. I've deleted the colors just because there's too much on my chart as it is. But if I show you the higher time frame, this is a large monthly supply. So, and I'd expect typically more of a reaction than that coming off a monthly supply. I mean, arguably it got the reaction when it hit here, but still on a rounded retest, I'd expect a bit more. Having said that, I guess like when we were back all the way back down here, this was a monthly supply somewhere in here, I think that section. And when it came in here, it did again sort of similarly kind of consolidated like this before running up. So, maybe we'll get something along those lines through where we are now. I'll have a look at a little bit at the structure later. But I guess we shall see. But for now, yeah, for me, it's not longs. I'd rather long alts and things like that. On the ETF data, so the other thing is, yeah, I mean, again, the data is not really supporting me thinking we're going to have a giant art move. I mean, I guess arguably the ETFs have already accumulated. There was a lot of buying over the last couple of weeks, but the last couple of days not. So I'll show you the far side data. So yesterday, there was a small amount of buying, and BlackRock may not be in yet. But only a very, very small amount of buying. And then the previous 2 days has been more selling, and there was some more selling last week from most of the ETFs, with BlackRock being the only one continuing to buy. And my concern with that is BlackRock has historically been known to buy the top. So, yeah, and when the others have started to sell, BlackRock is always sort of continuing to buy regardless of the price. So I don't necessarily think that BlackRock alone is the best indicator. Grayscale is still doing those huge amounts of transfers. So again, not really sure the purpose of that, whether that's preparing to sell off or whether it's just simply moving between wallets. I'm not sure. That's kind of, overpowering all the Arkham data. And 2 hours ago, we had a bit of buying from Bitwise. So yeah, so there's not really much to add on the ETF data. And also similarly, so the CBDs don't look great from a spot perspective. So you can see, like we know today, they have come up with the buying today, but in the bigger picture, let me just go to the hourly. There's so much on this because I look at kind of multiple. You can see that this is the Coinbase CBD here is very flat, while we've had this sort of slight rise in the actual price, and you can see the aggregated spot CBD is down. So again, that's sort of showing that the aggressive buying isn't really supporting the price rise. So I guess you need aggressive buying to come in to support more up move. Or it means, I guess, I guess you could argue that there's selling going on and the selling's being absorbed by limit buys if the CBD is dropping. But I think that's the theory I suppose to make in a downtrend. Anyway, on the other side, aggregated futures is rising, and less so over the last few days. It was more, where's that actually, a couple of weeks ago. So the rise was supported up there, but locally again, it's getting better rises supporting this. But then when I looked at the and then the aggregated CBD futures on coin margin contracts is also not supporting. So it's the stable coin margin contracts. But then if you look at EXO charts, which shows the net longs and shorts, again, it's not really, if it loads, this is always the one that's a bit of a struggle to load while I'm on video. It's, here we go. Yeah, so quite often you'll see is when you get a pump like that, you'll see the shorts have like died off massively to support the pump. OI tends to drop, but in this case OI was still rising, so this was kind of a decent move. There were longs still coming in. There were some longs at the top, and there were some shorts that got liquidated right at the top. But a lot of this wasn't a short squeeze like where quite often it is, and then you see it retrace. So again, shows why it's held better. So yeah, then on this initial drop, we did have OI dropping, and we did have longs closing and shorts closing. So again, like the OI is quite matched on both sides from what the longs and shorts are doing at the moment. And similarly today, the pump since last night, we've had longs, we've got OI increasing, we've got longs increasing and shorts increasing. So I guess what it's showing is it's not just one or the other. So if it's just short squeezing, then there's no real buying interest. So you want short squeezing to sort of push the price up, sure, but it needs to also have the buying interest. So it's good that we have longs involved as well. So it is supported. So this up move is supported by futures traders, but not by spot traders. So again, what that means, I don't know. I mean, normally I want to see kind of an extreme one way or the other. Like I said, like if we just saw shorts being dropping on rises like this, then you kind of go, okay, there's no buying, and you start actively looking for shorts. But this data is not telling me to actively look for shorts this time. So I want to see structure and things like that first. I don't think there's anything else on the data side. Liquidations. So there are a couple of walls at 100k, not huge ones, but reasonable size compared to what we've had so far. So obviously be conscious of 100k. On the liquidations front, obviously we've got heaps below now. And 99,500, 99,700 is on Binance. And let's see what we've got on bit by bit. So Bybit, not really much actually. There's some 100,200 or thereabouts, $220, and a little bit below. Um, but a lot more on Binance below anyway, and below that low that we had from, when's that, yesterday? Down to like 96, below 96k. And so as I've said, so again, like nothing's really changed for me. I'm still in this range. Maybe we're getting 3 hits to the high. Maybe we're not. Maybe it's just going to break out. And like I said, I mean, I'll show you some of the majors. I've been looking for more aggressive longs on other things because I think they're better risk to reward. They're less likely to mess around and stop you out. And look for liquidity and things like that, particularly with FOMC yesterday. That was the other thing. So FOMC didn't really do much, to be honest. The dollar, yeah, so this is the dollar, the euro, just really was a bit of sideways. This is the daily chart, but obviously no significant move there. Um, and on the indices, similarly. So the indices now, again, today in Asia have having a bit of a push up. Not really sure why this is. Let me see if there's any news on this. Armed conflicts rage, but hopes emerge for a trade war thaw. US futures jump as Trump hints at major tech trade deal. Okay, so there's something going on with tariffs and the trade deals that's pushing these indices up. But again, I had said, that while these were coming down, so they'd gone up and filled the gap on Monday and then dropped down on Tuesday. They had dropped down into daily demand. You can see all of them are like this thick blue line. Nasdaq took a wick through it. So again, still in this local daily uptrend, despite the fact all are at reasonable supply levels. It was only S&P and Nasdaq, while they're both in weekly supply, I kind of wanted them a bit higher for more for just nicer zones. S&P potentially taking out this orange line and Nasdaq coming up into that 2-day supply there. So I guess we shall see. I mean, they look like they're taking out the 12-hour supplies now, so I can probably delete those. But yeah, so Bitcoin's basically just following kind of what these are doing. So yeah, nothing's changed on the levels. As I said, if we get a wick down into here, great. A little bit higher on this I'd like, but really it's kind of anyone's guess when you're top guessing, really. What you're looking for is the re-entry. So what I want is to have the reaction. So for example, that was the level I was looking at. You have the reaction. In this case, I didn't get a re-entry, but you're looking for re-entries then on a retest. In this case, it didn't break down, so you look for the next zone of interest is up here, and then it was a little bit higher there, and again then you're looking for the retest entry. This was a big enough drop for me to look for a retest entry, but as I said, hadn't broken demand, so this was weak supply until proven otherwise, hence it didn't break down but just gave a bit of a reaction. So similarly, as we come into these zones, possible swing failure over 99.5, but prefer probably around the 100 mark just because those walls are up there and there's 2-day supply. And then you're looking for a reaction and then a retest for your entry. and the same on Ether. Again, that lower level, which hasn't been tested down there. You can go back and look at probably previous videos for all the levels underneath, local and distant on the macro. So Ether again, if we come up into this 3 day, just a reminder on this, if we do come up into this 3 day, there are trend line stops on both of these little low time frame on both of these little drops over here. So just be conscious, even if we come into the 3 day supply, it's a big zone and could go much higher inside it. I probably need to refib as well and find out exactly where the fibs were. Because obviously, as I've said many times, Ether does like the 61 fib. But yeah, anyway, that's that on Bitcoin and Ether. Quick update there. So then we had some nice entries and some missed entries on the majors. So EOS, I talked about this in the stream on the weekend, I think, or my last Bitcoin and Ether stream, where I covered the majors as well, that I was looking for a bounce in this 3 day demand. I was a bit wary because we were so high already, and because we have this monthly supply that we've come off. But yeah, it was an aggressive long, did wick down, I think a day or two later, but then came up and held. So now is up at this hourly supply. So if it's going to make a lower high, we're looking around here. So I guess we'll see. Failing that, we've got a 5 day above. Litecoin, I hadn't added a new entry, it didn't come down as low as this, but also had a very strong move up yesterday and has held. So again, we'll see, there was nothing new there. And Ripple is one of the weaker ones, but again is holding. So this was talked about this weekly demand. It came down onto this 4 or 5 day inside it and has pushed up. It does have 4 day supply though, so came off it locally here. It's got some trend line stops there, so actually this could push it a little bit higher. So yeah, now I want to see, are the majors going to, continue the uptrend? Are they going to be able to push back through these supplies? But yeah, so Ripple had a nice entry there if you got that, and then BCH again the same. So BCH, I think in my last stream I talked about having this entry here on 3-4 day demand there. I then added a new entry yesterday. So yesterday it had made a 3 day demand here. Made it so I had that initial 3 day, came up, bounced, retested, then made a new 3 day. So I added another entry and I said, might go deeper inside it because it does have this 8-hour untested inside the 3 day. So it did send a wick down into that zone. And again, has now had a really strong up move. This wick, ignore again, I need to probably switch charts on this. So the Coinbase chart is wicking significantly more, and it did over here as well. So alerts are going before other charts are hitting. And I think they have, the last I looked, so yeah, I looked at this a minute ago. So we have 5 day, 2 week and 3 week supply in here. And then there was a couple of, there's like equal highs over here. So I said, just watch out for 455. If it goes up there, I said in the alert, but at the moment we're just rejecting off the bottom there. However, the Coinbase chart is obviously showing a wick right through that zone and taking out. So I mean, Coinbase has no reason to take out any stops in inverted commas above here because Coinbase this is a spot chart, so there aren't any short stops above that level, although there may be profit taking. But yeah, so the perps chart have literally just hit that red cross and they're dropping off from there now. So that's a decent up move on BCH. Then on the new majors, I think that I didn't really have any long entries here, I don't think, except for, BNB had already hit when I did the last alert, and it just managed to consolidate and hold. So even on Monday when everything else was dropping, BNB just sort of held and is pushing up through. Link is annoying because I was kind of in two minds. Like I was considering putting an alert here because it was a daily right inside the 2 week, but then I was just sticking with being slightly more conservative and going in this 5 day down below. So yeah, I missed that one unfortunately. But that's again, you've just got to decide whether you're going to be more conservative and think you're going to get wicks deeper in the zone. At the point I was looking at this, I think I was thinking Bitcoin was going to go a lot lower. Or at least hoping Bitcoin would take out the bottom of the range, and therefore I didn't really want to move this higher. All the majors now are also in these 2 day supplies, and I've had a couple of alerts go on the shorts that I'll get to, but I know obviously you can see they're going quite high inside now. So Link's halfway up through that 2 day. BNB's already gone through it. Doggy was a kind of a weak one anyway, so Doggy again slightly did come down inside that 3 day, but unfortunately slightly front run the weekly demand for the re-entry on that. And finally ADA again slightly front run, so the alert didn't quite go here for then it didn't even quite wick down into weekly demand. So, and I don't love that. Like, and again, I'm in two minds. Are these just now going to get battered straight back down into those zones? So at the moment, I'll leave those zones alone. If we make, you can see I've got blue dash lines on a few of these. Like, if we start making a new daily demand today, so on, I think, Doggy Coin and on ADA here, we might make a daily demand if we close the day strong. Then I might consider some more aggressive longs, like from this consolidation. But at this point, I think on these, like, other than Link and BNB, I didn't particularly like anyway. But yeah, Doggy and Ada, I kind of would like to sort of go back down into those zones, but I guess we'll see. Um, so on and on the new majors, the second set, again exactly the same thing. So I had been more conservative on the long alert, so none have hit. Sol was down on weekly demand, 3-day demand all the way down here, and is still consolidating high. NEAR came off daily demand, as did DOT. Both of those were just more aggressive than I had. My alerts were 4-day demand on NEAR, and in fact for a lower low on DOT, just because I don't particularly like the structure of it. So on the short side, we've had Atom and DOT go. So DOT's obviously having had that aggressive uh, bounce on this daily. This is again what can happen. It's still holding this up structure. So we're in a local immediate up structure. So it's just a retest here. So this is a weak supply. But again, obviously it's worth looking at. So it's still inside that supply for now, but obviously it's come virtually all the way to the top of that. The only thing with DOT as well is that again, I didn't love, the fact it hadn't hit this 3-month at the high there. So while it's overarchingly in a 3-week supply here, obviously it can still go higher in the 3 weeks. So this is your downtrend. This is like really the more significant rejection level inside that downtrend, being a 3-month level. There's a 2-day and a 3-day supply there as well. It came off slightly below that. So again, if this kind of runs up to take out this immediate high from 2 weeks ago, then I won't be overly surprised. So yeah, that's a short that may fail there. Atom again's just hit, so Atom's just challenging. So again, it's this is just a triangle. So at this point can still go either way. I became more bear biased because it's come off 3 month supply, but obviously can still go higher inside it, and obviously it's taking its time. But again, just in the interest of having more aggressive entries in both directions to have more frequent trades, I guess. So see what happens here on the 2-day on Atom. It came down deep into the 3-day demand at the base. And then NEAR's about to hit that 2-day supply as well. And Sol I left alone because I did like, I didn't show that in the last stream actually, but I'll also show you that quickly. The Sol Grayscale chart is one of the few I kind of liked, just because Sol had come off this monthly demand. This is GSOL if you want to look at the ticker. It's come off this monthly demand at the wick, and then it made this new weekly demand. So sometimes the Grayscale charts can preempt what the rest of the market does. So I thought that was kind of just worth having on the radar. I think I did look at the others, but there weren't. Something like Link is looking pretty horrible, although it's in a monthly demand as well. And they're not necessarily overly reliable, these on all the different alts. This is DeFi. I've looked at Mana for a while actually, because I know that had a lot of short entries recently. So again, that's coming down. So a lot of the Grayscale alt charts are just looking nasty. Sol is one of the bigger ones. So again, like I said, it's just something to keep on the radar. I know on Litecoin, BCH, for example, I've used these quite effectively before to see turnarounds on the lower time frames. So it's worth watching just to see what the Grayscale is doing. And even, even BTC actually on Grayscale, it came down into this 3-month demand, which we didn't have, so we had our front run on the US dollar pair. But on the GBTC, it has come down into the 3 months. So again, it's just worth, and then we've had that big bounce. So when you look at the Grayscale chart, it's not surprising. On the US dollar chart, you're kind of like, oh, I would have liked that a bit lower. But yeah, so anyway, that's just a side note on those. I think that's it on the majors. And then moving on to the alts. So yesterday I got up to go on to this one chart. Yesterday I got up to the Ks, and I've had maybe 2 or 3 alerts come in since then, but I think not loads. BERA was the only one that's in the first half of the alphabet, therefore wouldn't necessarily get covered. So let me just resort the list. Sort for me. Okay, so let's do BERA first, and then I will move on to the Ls, etc. So again, this is just typical downtrend like everything else. So I had a short alert here that's gone off this morning. I did say just be slightly wary here of these the like little kind of curve down here in trend line stops because this could squeeze through, but this is something you can watch for a short on. Maybe it'll go higher up to this 2-day up here, so watch from sort of now up to 3.6 or so and see if you can get in a short on that. I did throw in a long entry. I've said also in the comment here that it's high risk. It's a clean daily, but again, now we have had a sort of second hit to the low and potentially reclaiming this low. It's obviously a very slow momentum drop. Um, so, um, yeah, worth looking for a possibility of a long, but no, this is high risk because we're still coming off weekly supply at this point. If this does push up a lot higher in this, then this will become a better entry, but obviously it may or may not test. And again, you're just looking similar to here, like this had a daily demand here and it came back for a test on the next candle, even just to push higher, like it doesn't have to push, this daily doesn't have to push all the way through the weekly supply. Just need to see what the reaction is when it gets there. Um, if you see something like this and it does come and test and it just gives you sort of small bounces, then obviously just get out because you'll counter the bigger trend. Well, they're not on the okay. Then Kilo was another new one that hit last night. And this was a 12-hour demand. So again, a little bit more of a challenging one. So, this is it can be an accumulation, or it could be a bear flag that's going to fall off a cliff. Hold on one sec. I just need to take a very quick break. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay, so Kilo, yeah, is this an accumulation that's about to break out? Or is it just sort of a bear flag that's about to break down? So, again, it's not strong. It's still under weekly supply, as I keep saying, and while we're under these weekly structures, we are still bearish on the weekly time frame. It's not a strong weekly because it hasn't broken the low, so really it's just sort of sideways consolidation, but and hence just trade both directions. So possibly not the highest probability long. Although we are seeing a bit of green on alts today, maybe we'll get some of these catch up a bit later. But yeah, that's just a 12-hour demand to watch. Inside, I think that's a 4-day or a 5-day there. So as I was saying yesterday, again, if you watch yesterday's stream, I'm looking kind of really for these weeklies to start flipping to support and to see the support hold. In the case of the weeklies that are broken, and or some of the ones that are consolidated for extended periods down here are going to potentially have 3-week demands um, at the end of this week, again, if we hold for the rest of the week. So we'll need to see. And I think, yeah, KMNO and Coma, I believe I did yesterday. Yeah, so that has come through. Daily demand. I was looking for sort of we're at the test on 2-hour supply on KMNO. Can't remember if I did that, had that entry in there before yesterday or not. I know, I think this was one of the ones I was talking about, the possibility when it has in this case, it's now got an 8-hour, possibly a 12-hour supply in there. I was talking about, so now it's got an 8-hour supply, about how if we have 8-hour supplies with these drops, 8 or 12-hour, firstly, they are pretty good short entries to re-enter. So wait for a drop and then wait for an 8 or 12-hour supply to be formed. However, just be conscious that in some cases they're making 1 or 2-hour supply above untested. So that in many cases they're coming through that initial zone before the drop. So either trade the 8-hour with a wider stop or wait and see if it gets taken out first. Coma, I think I'm pretty sure I did yesterday. K is a new one from to this morning actually. So this is just a kind of a bit of a shit show of a chart. So I had a kind of a high risk short for the possibility of a rejection on this giant. And there must be just 1 4-hour supply in there, so a massive 4-hour supply. Obviously, I had to get a very small rejection there, but now I haven't got the alert in, so then I reset the alert for this 30-minute supply inside the 4-hour. Again, not the highest probability, but just something to watch. Like at some stage, I think this will fall off a cliff. It's just a question of getting the timing right on it. So yeah, you can keep an eye on that, or maybe set yourself a trend line alert if it breaks down the trend line. Yeah, but it may or may not be ready yet. And obviously, it's been in this slow grind up since the 30th of April, so 8 days. So yeah, keep an eye on that. But again, not that it's not the best zone, so we'll see what happens. Leia is pretty special. So Leia, really annoying, missed my short entry. I actually had a short entry, so I did see this as it was coming off the swing failure and set a short entry for this 4-hour supply at the top, which did not get hit on that last little wick. So yeah, I had the alert set in here, but the wick wicked up. It didn't wick up high enough, unfortunately, before being thrown off a cliff. And I did say to somebody, I'm wondering if, I said a while ago, actually back in here, I didn't know if this was going to pull an OM or if it was going to end up being a CAS, where it just tests and goes up and tests and goes up forever. So obviously it's ended up not quite as bad as OM, like, it's not all the way down here, but not great. So I had previously had an alert set for a long entry on this 2-day here, just on that retest of the breakout, but it's come down with just a bit too much momentum. The next level, I mean, it's difficult through here because it's choppy. So the next level of interest would be that 61 fib on the log scale, and then this first weekly zone. But there is another weekly zone down here. So, and again, like if you want to trade this, just be a bit careful. Like I don't know what if anything, was the catalyst for this. If there's a dev sell or something like that. So just be a little bit careful of FOMOing into this unless you really know that this drop is just a long squeeze and it's not like a dev scam doing a runner kind of scenario. But anyway, yeah, so we've come through this 2-day and just into this 12 or 8-hour at the base here. And it's like I said, it's quite hard to pick, where this is going to bounce. My preference now would possibly be a touch lower because of that 61 fib, but we'll see. And then, yeah, I mean, it's good. You can look for a short here on the 12-hour supply if you want. I've just set the alert for very conservatively up there because I just want to see the strength of this first. It's just something I'm keeping an eye on. Looks okay. So the alert's gone on this, and obviously it's slightly front run the level. It's got a 3-week. No, it hasn't got a 3-week yet. I've just kind of marked it in early. Actually hasn't got a week. Normally I only mark them in early when they've got a weekly there. It does have a 3-day, so I'm going to reset that alert because it's just front run it slightly. 3-day, 3-week run reset. So we will see So, I mean, these, the levels aren't gospel. So, um, if I reset it, like if you do see, like if you're seeing an alert hit like this and it is wicking above, there is still no reason you can't enter on the lower time frames. Like it doesn't have to come back to this level, but I do like to set the alert in case it does come back and will come deeper. In this case, it's just coming right up into a daily supply here. It's got another daily supply above. That's a little bit. Again, I don't really want to short that because of the possibility of this 3 week here, and the fact it only came off a daily at the high. So not looking for more aggressive shorts on this, but I don't necessarily think it's going to get through this area too easily. So we might at least see some more consolidation, where this is either rejects now-ish or goes up into that daily and then comes back in here and then maybe we get the move. So we just need to wait and see a little bit on that. Loom is hideous. Again, I'm not really sure what happened with this, if anything. I looked to see if it was a delisting, and it wasn't. Or not that I've seen anywhere, unless somebody else knows it's a delisting before I know. Um, it's I mean, really, I guess this had an annual demand. Now delete, and it basically, I think it got a very small bounce off the top, and it just ran straight through it. So, maybe it's just all over for Loom. If the devs do a runner or whatever. I had an alert here for 3 months supply inside it, but it's come off the 2 month a little bit lower. So we did get I think shorts on the previous thing down, but not on the bounce. I know maybe it was on the bounce there. Um, so yeah, so then I did have an alert set for the possibility of a higher low. Um, and that's, as I've said yesterday, these are the sort of risks. And okay, so this is just a bit of a messy one. It's been not necessarily that easy, some decent shorts here and here, but that one got run through. And then, so I had this long for the possibility of a higher low. And again, we saw this sort of similar structure that I just spoke about a minute ago on K or Kilo, I think, I forget which one. So you're just kind of going, well, we're coming off weekly supply, we're still in this weekly downtrend. But are we going to hold a higher low here? Is it K? No, not K, Kilo. Yeah, sort of similar here. You can see we've got that, test, 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 three tests weekly supply. So, again, if it tests again, maybe it'll run through it, but at the moment, still in that weekly downtrend. And then Loom, while it was more volatile, but it was the same, test, test, weekly supply, then lower highs, and then fall off a cliff. So it didn't make the higher low and in fact ran straight through it. And then I have the alert here for all-time low. So what we're looking for on the alert for all-time low is, is it making something that I can short on a retest? Or is it going to swing fail and come straight back up through? And I guess because this is so aggressively fallen, I'll put this weekly in because it's probably going to make a weekly supply unless it really decides to pump. Um, so yeah, there's so much momentum on that. I'm expecting it probably not going to be a deviation of the low, but because also it's a volatile type, it's a volatile mover. It's been very volatile on these bounces. Gonna put this alert for pull this alert down. Like I can't waste my alerts because I keep running out, but I'm just gonna pull this alert down and say 1 week supply if confirms. I mean, even that probably maybe well be too conservative. It's come down so hard, this may just come up into here. If that's a decent all-time low on the CoinEx chart, you probably have to look at what the Binance chart looks like on this. Because maybe Binance people aren't seeing this as all-time low, or maybe they're just seeing maybe all-time low on Binance is higher. Um, so, but anyway, I think it's worth looking for a short if it gets back up into this weekly supply. But could well, there's nothing really low time frame. So you can see, so yeah, what you're looking for, is something like this. If it does break down an all-time low or a significant level like that, you're looking for, what's the supply? It's broken down. In this case, it's just come back up and tested the level before dropping again. If I'm honest, like I probably would have looked at, hopefully for this to come back up into there before the drop if I'd been trading this. So yeah, you can start, you can look more aggressively for shorts on this 4 hour supply if you want to. But obviously I put my alerts higher time frame, so I potentially look back up there. But I'll keep an eye on this. If I see it come back up into here, I might think about looking for a more aggressive short in the hope it doesn't do, pull a Loom kind of candle. I I talked about LRC and ICX yesterday. So again, these were two that had sort of big, kind of fairly random pumps on when was that, the 6th, on the 5th of May, on Monday. But they both made 5-day demand. So let's just see what ICX did. They both made a 4 or 5-day demand and had come like deep inside it. And obviously in the case of, so ICX has come all the way back to the bottom on this 4 hour inside the bigger 5 day. So like the kind of the alert, in fact, was kind of up here, but really it's the whole zone and it came very deep down inside it. So ICX and LRC was exactly the same. So again, I don't know if there was some catalyst for these two. And again, so ICX, I'd set the alert for the weekly zone just below because that hadn't been tested, whereas LRC, I'd set it slightly more aggressively on this 4 hour inside, again, the bigger 4-5 day. I think ICX, part of the reason, I think it had taken some stops off the high. So because it had taken stops up here, although it hadn't quite hit the 3-month supply here, I thought maybe at least potentially, I mean, it's taken all the stops here, but potentially I thought it could take stops here and run into this 3-day demand below. If not, just drop. Could fully just take out the lows entirely from there. But they were maybe a little bit reactive on the long side on that, given the crazy move. So in situations like this, I tend to prefer to short rather than try and guess where they might bounce when they're coming down aggressively like this. I won't go back to ICX actually. It does have a 2-hour supply at the top. So this has a 4-hour supply. LRC, which got tested already. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to give it a little bit more time for these to develop. So you can keep an eye on LRC if it comes down into this 4-hour demand below, because then maybe that can give a bigger move up to 3-month supply above. If the market allows it, if we're going to continue to have a strong market. Major is a nice one. So this hit like earlier in May or like last weekend. So it came down into this 2-week zone. And again, just illustrates here the difficulty that you have sometimes. It's like, oh, do you put an aggressive entry on the 2-week? Or do you wait for things to come down? So, much as I was saying about link earlier, do you wait for things to come down? When it's got a big green candle like this, it could retrace the whole candle. And in fact, it's likely to retrace the whole candle, but then also it could also give you a scalp, like a decent sized scalp in the interim. So here, while there's not much locally, it has come, it has bounced off there and has gone straight back up into 3-day supply. So, and again, didn't put for an aggressive short on this because of that 2-week demand. But this is kind of a nicer type structure. But now, yeah, there's no trade on it right now. We need to sort of wait and see if either it breaks through here if you got the entry already, or if it rejects now and goes back down to that lower zone. MUBARAK. Similar to BERA that I talked about earlier, it's just looking for that aggressive long entry on daily demand down here, having had it not break supply at all. And this, I don't know, maybe when I set that alert, maybe I set that right way back there, in which case it's obviously had a lot of consolidation since then. There's no new weekly, no 5-day, 4-day. So it had made a 3-day supply here, so it would have been even riskier long entry if you'd taken that, but it has obviously wicked back through. In fact, arguably the 3-day supply is up to there. So yeah, again, this is not an entry I would necessarily take unless you're in it already. We're still holding under this 2-day supply. So we're just looking to see if we're going to get a little bit more consolidation through here, but it's like, I think there's stronger charts. Maybe it'll give you a 8-hour demand to look for an entry on, but at the moment that's, still considering its prospects, but a given decent scalp off the level anyway. MUBARAK, I think, was similar, is also, again, come back down into a daily demand there. Let me just check give me the opportunity to update some of these actually, because obviously you've got to continually look at every chart to see what new zones are being made. Sorry, my mouse is just frozen momentarily, which happens occasionally. One day I might buy an expensive mouse and then maybe this won't happen, or maybe this happens regardless. Here we are, we're back. But sometimes, I don't know if it just disconnects from Bluetooth. I also feel like Bluetooth's pretty crappy on Windows. Like I find Bluetooth on both on this computer, which is my laptop, and on my desktop just stops sometimes when it feels like it. I don't know if that's me, but given it's two different computers, I would assume it's not me or it's more to do with the computer. Who knows? Okay, so similar here, we're in a downtrend from based on 3-day supply up there. Has come through some local supply, so that's good. So again, it was a better long entry on this. It's got a new 2-day supply up there. But again, decent prospect of a higher low here, so you can certainly keep an eye on this one. If it makes a new 8 or 12-hour demand, again, look for long entries on the retest on this. This is reasonable. And then just, yeah, watch that it doesn't get hung up on any local supply. MUBI, very similar. So this again, now we're seeing some of the bounces on these levels that I talked about yesterday. So, all again, just to run over the structure that we're seeing on everything, like we have this, most things have a weekly or a 4-day, 5-day demands in here. They've got, sorry, in some cases 3 days and various others, but in most cases we've got daily here. Quite often we've got a daily here as well. In a lot of cases we don't have a test of this daily below, so it's challenging to know if this is going to dip all the way back down to the daily or whether they're going to bounce higher. But again, here MUBI's looking kind of halfway decent. It's had a serious drop there. But yeah, it's looking halfway decent if it can pick up. So again, if you can find a low time frame entry, if it makes this is the daily chart, but if it makes again 12 or 8-hour demand in there, you can look for long re-entries on this. Potentially make a 12-hour in there in the next 6 hours or so. And then yeah, again, not looking for aggressive shorts on this based on the higher low and the prospect. I'm still on the fence about whether we've made the low on others or whether we're due one more drop. Obviously today we're having a bigger move up possibly than I expected. But yeah, so I need to kind of maybe check my overall bias on alts. But regardless, it's still been very nice to trade in both directions, like we keep saying. NEIROETH is again one of the stronger ones. Has made a monthly demand down here, so this will be an interesting one if it ever comes back to test. It's in monthly supply, so I'm still short bias. So it's much the same as Bitcoin, really. Monthly demand down here. If we come back for a test, great. It's in monthly supply. It's still pushing and obviously still holding up there. But I have had, I think, 3 short entries on that. But it's looking now like maybe it wants to go a little bit higher. I think I didn't, yes. I mean, it's a lot of chop here, so there wasn't any other short entry that I wanted higher on this, I don't think. Let's look at what we've got on the 2-day and daily. So there is a 2-day here. This 2-day at the top here didn't quite get tested on that wick, so maybe we'll get a rejection into that area. Oh, that is my alert. Alert to take my quit smoking drug. Do that now when I remember. Okay, so yeah, so what I had on this obviously was entry on, I think it was a 5-day weekly supply here. Then it dropped, and then as I've said, we look for the retests on the 8 and 12-hour supply. So this still is holding the 12-hour demand there. So this is a 12-hour demand. So it is still in an uptrend. But yeah, I got the short off that 8-hour supply, and then I think I'd put a more aggressive again alert for 8-hour supply here. So again, did get a decent drop, or not a decent drop, a little bit of a drop, maybe in fact a bigger drop actually. I think I had quite actually a very quick reaction on this, so I don't really know if anybody would have got a chance to trade it. Yeah, so did have a very quick reaction on the hourly, but then still holding this 12-hour demand at the base, and now has come back up through that 8-hour zone. So yeah, this needs a bit more time now. Maybe it's going to run up to that 2-day out there. I'm not really sure if I want to set an alert there or not. Don't love it as a zone with the wick. I'm not going to send an alert up there. So what will be. I'll keep an eye on it, and if it does, in fact, then this daily up the top is probably a better zone, but it may or may not get all the way up there in one try. Up here, and or 12-hour right underneath it, so this possibly is another zone of interest. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll see on that. For me, like again, if I see something flip here, maybe I'll look for a long entry, but I don't necessarily really want to do that in monthly supply. I'd really like to see a big drop on this and bring it all the way back down to monthly demand for a decent long. If you're trading this on the long side, then just keep an eye on it and see if it's going to make a daily demand in here today. I mean, some of these, like we saw a couple on like, for example, Jelly Jelly, and I talked about WIZZ yesterday, which I might think I'm going to come to on the list later. Yeah, that they do have the consolidations up here for a really long time and look like they want to break out and then eventually just fall off a cliff. So I guess that this is very early for this, so we need to need significantly more time in here to see what it's going to give. Need to do that. So back to the list. Week. Week. So what do we have on this? Okay, so I think I had a short entry coming in on the 1st of May. I guess there was something in there, weekly supply or whatever, but it's run through that. It's got a monthly supply here, but it's based on this first candle on XC, so it's not really a great monthly supply, and I think that's why I didn't have an alert. I think it did reject it on that previous alert, but yeah, so not really surprised it sent a wick through that zone. Then I had the possibility of a long on a retest of this. Like it really did just take a bit too long to get here in this case, I think. And what you want is, if you're going to do an aggressive long or based on the retest of an 8 or 4 hour, like immediately below the price, or even a lower time frame, 1 or 2 hour, like you really want the hit to happen pretty quickly. You don't want to see all this consolidation before the zone hits. Because then what it's doing is making supply, and then it's going to make it significantly harder to get back up. So while this is at the moment holding, and in fact we've made an 8-hour demand here, so I think, you keep an eye on this. It's worth watching, but you can see how long it's taken now. However, it has held despite the volatility of the market in the last few days and the fact that most alts have died significantly more in this period of time. So I think this is worth an eye. And then, yeah, like I'll keep an eye on it myself, and if failing that, we'll be looking all the way back down there. But yeah, keep an eye on this coming off 8-hour demand here. Then 2 hour supply up there is possible short. Again, it's difficult because if it comes all the way back up here, having had this much accumulation and consolidation, then we might see, it just runs straight through the 11. And I'm trying to think, yeah, we had that yesterday that we saw on ASR. I did find out later that ASR was listed on Binance, so exactly that's kind of I think why we had this. I'm not sure if it's the first pump or the second pump or both, but I think it was listed. So yeah, when I had this entry looking for a short off that hourly supply, like it had just taken too long to get there, so it makes me a little bit nervous that OIK. And in fact, that's less. This has had a lot more consolidation. So to look for shorts there, I'm thinking, this is possibly going to squeeze all the way through this if it does run from here. But yeah, keep an eye on that one for longs. PARTI is another pretty nice one. So I did have an early short on whatever this was here, daily supply, I guess. Excuse me. Yeah, daily supply there. It's run up through it up to this 4-hour at the top, and then it's dropped back down into daily demand below. So nice clean daily PA there. Decent reaction here, and then I also had. So I did have this alert again from earlier on. See if it's 2-hour or hourly supply. Yeah, 2-hour supply. So again, sort of similar to ASR on this, this is still, now it's come down into daily demand. It might just run through this zone, but it's had a bit less consolidation. And then, obviously did have this wick up, so it's more likely maybe that this is going to get a reaction here. So I'll leave that there for a short at the moment. So if you're in the long, just be careful when it gets to around that level, if it gets to around that level. Yeah, then we'll just see the reaction. And I guess, yeah, we've got a weekly demand below here. At least on this, I think it's got no supply above this level. Very little. Come on, load. Makes me very impatient when this happens. I feel like I spend so much time wasted, that if I added up all the, 30 seconds in the day, or however long this is going to take. Obviously, I know my luck it'll be like 10 minutes now. I've said that. But if I added up all the times in the day that I wait for these damn charts to load or for the internet to do what internet's doing, I would have significantly more productive hours. And obviously, on principle now, this is being a really slow one. Come on. The problem is when it does it, you then get more impatient, and then you start clicking around indiscriminately, hoping other things will load. Let me see what Bitcoin's doing while I'm in. Yeah, and even that thing probably not going to load. Okay, so we're getting a bit of a reaction there on Ether. Yeah, still pretty early days on those. I guess we've had the internet come back now. Okay, so internet's come back, but all the drawings are off the page. Okay, so yeah, that's this in fact was a 3-day demand. Um, so sometimes I guess they convert. Okay, so things are back, but they're not updating properly. So what have we got? No, the charts are hating me halfway through, or the internet's hating me, and I've still got quite a lot on the list to go, which is kind of annoying. Really don't want to have to stop this halfway through and then restart it again. Not least because it takes ages to crop and edit. Okay, yeah, so it's already come off this. What I wanted to look at, it has made a weekly demand down here, but it did already come off it on a lower time frame. And again, that's the difficulty. I think, maybe there's a new 4-day or 3-day. I know those have actually been tested as well. Um, just change this to a 3-day. Hopefully my internet is back now. Yeah, appears to be better. Um, and then these trend lines stop. So I guess, probably I wouldn't, while this is a weekly demand in here, I probably wouldn't look for longs there just due to this chop. So if we do get a rejection there, I think that may be something that's worth considering holding. Um, and then, yeah, I'd probably look for longs all the way down here if we are going to start drifting into this zone, or at least because I'd expect to take out the stops underneath there. Move on to PIVX. So PIVX, this kind of I think was a little bit lucky on the short side actually. I think because I think I just haven't looked at this for ages. It was probably when I last did the watch list and did the P's that I had this 5-day supply alert set all the way up here because I certainly, well, like most of them, I would have moved them down to the 2 or 3 month demands. And in fact, most cases we are getting rejections in at the 2 or 3 month levels. But in this case of PIVX, like it did wick all the way up to the top. So again, yeah, my bias on this obviously is down because we're coming off 3 month supply. Um, even though it's come all the way up to the 5-day inside. So I'm not confident, particularly of shorts. Sorry, of longs on this. I have set an alert for this daily range low retest and 2 to 3 day demand. However, it's coming from 3 month supply. So, maybe it's a deviation below this range, and maybe it will pick up here for another move. But just be conscious, again, at the higher time frame, it's annual supply. It may have hit 15 times in there, depending on when that was created. Um, and also coming off 3 month supply. So this is a pretty aggressive long entry on that basis. Um, and obviously, that's a really huge wick. And to be fair, I didn't actually look at other exchanges. I don't know if this wick exists on the XC and the futures charts or whether this is a random. Sometimes we get these random rogue wicks. Oh, that was the other one I didn't cover. Go mining also came up as an alert. So you occasionally get these random rogue wicks on some exchanges, but not on others. But remember to do go mining at the end. Let me just move that to the end of the list, otherwise I'll forget about it. Because I like the go mining chart. Okay, so here that's PIVX. So yeah, looking for longs if we come into here, and there's nothing really I want to look for shorts on that at the moment because the wicks are too much. Prompt had a 4-day demand and a daily inside it, so I had an alert for the 4-day and then follow up alert for the daily. So obviously we're now getting a small move on that. So I guess we just need to see, and it's got supply a bit close here, so not something I'd really look for longs on right now. To be honest, I'd wait to see if we form a little bit of an uptrend first. Pump. So yeah, pump. Okay, again, this level is very dubious. It's so when we have a level from when the exchange opened. So on this weekly, this is obviously the week that next see a listed pump. Then you get a level. Like sometimes I see them work, sometimes I see them do absolutely nothing. And again, short of going through every single chart to look and see if there's confluence across, Binance and all the other charts that have this coin. Um, like it doesn't matter. Like it's a level of interest, a zone of interest, and we're looking for a reaction at this zone. So there's no reason you can't look for a reaction here, but just know that it's not necessarily the best zone to be looking at it for at. Okay, let me just see so we've got a new 3-day supply in there, and then quite a lot of chop above. Um, so it's still got a daily. So I don't know. I mean, that's something like this. I have no idea if we're just going to drift of death all the way down. Are we going to get a decent bounce here and at least maybe take out some of these local zones here? Um, so yeah, keep an eye on that again. Just be conscious. It's got supply really close, so it's not the best structure to be looking for longs. I certainly wouldn't be looking for longs on this weekly with your stop below the weekly. That's just it's far too big. And if we drop down deeper inside, there's a daily. There's a couple of 4 hours here, and then there's a daily below. But yeah, you can just watch and see if this gives any more follow up. PA for you to trade. It's still very early on that, so it's something you can watch. Um, please. I just feel very uncomfortable with saying please. Um, maybe there's something Freudian. Um, so this is a weekly demand anyway. So again, was worth looking for the long entry. It was a bit of a challenging one, like so many others. Like I said, it's one of the ones that has this sort of floating zone that hasn't really tested the daily at the base. And even on this, I actually wanted it to test the 4 hour down there. So kind of likes to front run me. But now is in weekly demand. So, but again, back up in daily supply. So again, not the cleanest for now. Has made a new daily demand there and has just actually tapped off it. So maybe we could get a bit of a move on this. Um, that's something to keep an eye on. But again, it's not perfect for entry right now. But yeah, keep an eye on it and just see if it gives you a bit more consolidation in PA for then potentially a bigger move up. RFC, I was kind of again looking at like I quite like this chart. Come back down and hit this 4-day demand. So I had the alert go here. I think on the first, and then obviously it front ran slightly. It went straight back up to the daily supply, and then I was looking for. So I did put a comment on this when I put this alert in that because I don't mind this chart and I feel like it could run through this supply here. That it was worth looking for a possibility of a higher low on here just in case it had front run. So it's got some wicks and things over here. So we did get a small bounce off there. But then, yeah, in fact, got a very good bounce like initially. So I like some one person in my group I entered that and got that wick up there. But then consolidated for a while before dropping deeper. So it's now back down in this 5-day zone. So again, this is something certainly keep an eye on this for long entries. It's still early days, so when I say early days, I mean that's a good thing because it means you've got time to sort of prepare. Look at what your supply is, look at what your local supply is, your local demand, and use whatever strategy you use for entering on the lower time frames. You can see if it gives you it. But yeah, like I'm certainly not averse to this one. Not really sure what this is one of the crazy MEXC gaps that we have, but yeah, if the market's going to hold, this is something decent that you can watch. Just watch out for that 3-day supply above, actually. Seed is sort of similar to those other ones I talked about earlier, K and I don't know, whatever the other one was, not K, Kilo. Um, and again, we've kind of broken this sort of dubious who cares trend line. And it came back. So initially I had, short on this 4 or 5 day supply. Obviously I expected to take out some of these wicks. Then I looked for, then we did get the rejection. I looked for the lower high for the short entry, but moved back up into that supply again. And again, like I should have preempted that really because this hadn't quite hit the zone. So it's not surprising it comes back and an ABC correction. Um, and again, now it's drifting back down, but again, still in the bigger downtrend. So we've still got, this is still a retest for the possibility of that happening. but worth looking for a long on this daily demand. So that's given a decent move, but I wouldn't be looking to long this again, but based on that, bigger structure at this stage. So that, gave the initial reaction. So it's up to you again. It is consolidating reasonably well, so I don't mind it. If you still want to continue to trade this daily demand, like it may still run from here. Let me just check and see if it's got a new supply. So it's got a new, in fact, yeah, it's got a new 3-day supply in there. So in fact, I'd be more short biased on this now. Um, just going to delete this 3-day here. So yeah, my bias is remaining short on this. So yeah, don't look for longs on this. In fact, look for shorts if you are so inclined. Difficulty with shorting now is obviously we're shorting like potentially relatively low, having had so much drop on a lot of coins. But then obviously, who's to say we're not going to have another 95% drop? But yeah, my bias on this would definitely not be up unless I see this 3-day supply break and flip to demand. SEI, so okay, that's another one. So that's broken daily demand, didn't come anywhere near this weekly. It's another one that's clear on that structure that I've talked about, that you've got, daily demand down the bottom, got tested, then made a new one, didn't get tested, now made 4-day and weekly in the middle. And also hasn't quite hit the 2-week supply at the high. So again, like, yeah, while this has a 2-day supply, wouldn't be looking to aggressively short that while it's not hit that weekly, the 2-weekly at the high, although it has come off a 2-day. So it has come off a clean 2-day supply. I've got quite a few of these 2 days alerted actually, or maybe it's this, so this 2-day up here. Well, in this case, that's looks like to be a 4-day as well as a 2-day. But yeah, so not aggressively shorting this, and also not because it's coming off the 2-month demand. So coming off the 2-month demand at the lows makes it more confident in taking longs on this slightly more aggressively. So again, you can just see what the reaction is here on the 2-day, but I'd be waiting till it comes lower before looking for longs on that. Sonic, another one that potentially could move, but again, I was being more aggressive on the shorts. I'm not sure in what order those have happened, but we are still under 2-weekly supply. See the 2-week, but it's come off 2 weeks. Also got 2-weekly demand, so it's just trapped in the sort of triangle. And I had an alert here for 3-day / 2-weekly demand in there. There's also a 5-day a little bit lower. So I'm going to reset that alert at the base here. And again, difficult, it's got wicks here. It's got wicks here where it hasn't quite tested this daily. Hasn't quite tested that daily zone, hasn't quite tested that daily zone, so it's a bit more of a challenging one. But I'll have to look at the lower time frames as, if this alert hits 2-week demand. So if we come back down here, so I think I would have had this on the 3-day / the 2-week. So if we come, so obviously, I just don't know what order this has happened in. So we had the short off 2-weekly supply. It's come back down. It's retested 12-hour supply. So again, like these are the ones I've talked about many times. You want to need clean 12-hour supply in there. That's given a drop down into 3-day demand. It hasn't quite hit the 2-week just below, and has now bounced again. So keep an eye on the trading up and down. And for this, yeah, like I say, this is just in between the higher time frame 2-week and the lower time, the 2-week supply and 2-week demand. So we just need to see which way it's going to break. Fairly decent bounce off that level though, so that's kind of nice. But again, not still in this kind of local immediate downtrend. So we'll see what kind of reaction we get through here. STO. Okay, so this was, yeah, I think just a risky aggressive long entry. So 4-day, 5-day demand in there. It's kind of drifting a little bit down in the zone. And obviously can come down. It's got a daily at the base here. It's just not showing much of a sign of a bounce at the moment, but it was pretty aggressive after this potential blow off top. So be a little bit careful of longs on this. I think again wait it out, see if it gives you a little bit more PA. It's sort of clinging to the linear trend line there. So again, this has the 12-hour supplies through here, but it's got a 4-hour above untested. So, and some wicks going through there. So again, I wouldn't look for an aggressive short on this. You can look for one in this area if you want to, but yeah, just be conscious that there's an untested 4-hour above and these trend line stops. Plus, we're still in an uptrend at this stage because we're still on 4-day demand. STPT. This is one of the few stronger ones off the zone. So we are in. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is just in general one of the stronger charts. So got a 3-month demand at the lows, which it's taken multiple wicks into, and it's, again, now just taken out the lowest 2 wicks and it's pushed up high. So at the moment, it's back above the 3-month level here. So got on the 6-month. Yeah, the 6-month was a bit challenging. So it had closed above the 6-month. It did have a 6-month demand, but then it's taken a wick all the way back through it. Again, it's sort of happened with weak demand. It was a 6-month, but it was a weak demand. So, and now we're pushing back up. So we had a 2 weekly supply here. It's a very, very big one. I don't really like it, so I'm going to delete it. It's a very, very big zone. I shouldn't do that. I should remember I'm still in the 2 week. Very, very big zone. So obviously not overly surprising. We've come higher inside it. So I did have an alert on this daily supply in there. It's looking like so it's made a new daily demand there. Back in. So it's made a new daily demand there. So again, I wouldn't be looking for shorts on this right now. Not until that daily demand breaks or until you start to see some structure. Maybe it'll get a move up to the next zone up there. So I had a little reaction off that initially, but the reaction just came back down into 4-hour demand. So this just needs a bit more time, a bit more consolidation, but at the moment the bias is still up. So yeah, just see if we get a reaction if the price makes it all the way up there. On the long side, obviously, it's got all these trend line stops through here, so I think it's certainly a decent one to look for shorts on, but you just need to have the structure to be able to do that. And yeah, then potentially look for a retest back down on this 4-day, and then obviously those 3-month levels that could retest down the bottom. Actually, where's that 6-month level again? Yeah, so in fact, that's actually the 6-month level at the same level as this 2 weeks. So maybe this is actually trying to pick back up that 6-month demand as support. In which case, this could probably or possibly end up very, very bullish. So just be careful of shorting STPT. Tier was another challenging one. The alert went, I think, quite a few days ago, like towards the start of May or the first couple of days of May, so 5 days or so. But it's like it came down really deep in that 4-day zone, but is now finally trying to bounce. But and to be honest, I was against my better judgment to actually look for longs on this. I just saw a lot of influencers were kind of like, oh dear, dear, and I didn't really know why. To be fair, like I looked at this chart and I'm like, why do you love this chart so much? And I don't know if it's just a hangover from people who were in it back here, because I've seen so many people try to long this throughout this whole, you can see around here that I just got like, no, I'm not looking for longs on this, whereas I've seen a lot of people longing sort of a bit like, well, obviously to give some bounces through here. But I remember there actually, so well, heaps of people longing this, thinking this was going to do a massive breakout, but I was like, okay, well, we get the trend line breakout there, but then straight up into 2 week supply, monthly supply, and just dropped from there like a stone. But yeah, it's a lot of people getting screwed. So I have no idea why I got sucked into, all influencers are longing this again. It must be something to long. So, okay, we are on 4-day demand. We are, in this major monthly zone. But, really, it's not looking great, is it? It had a period from October 2023 to February 24, so 5 months or so of up. And then from February 2024 to May 2024, and then a year and a half of down. So yeah, there is no reason to think this is particularly a long entry at all. So it's come off 3 week supply as well. Hopefully I put that in the alert. I can't recall. But yeah, it's not really something that's I'm bullish on at all. If it gets up a little bit higher in that 3 week supply, look for shorts. Maybe people who are long in this are going to get lucky. It is in that monthly demand, I guess, but it's still got so much supply above. It's a really challenging one. Yeah, so I think for me, I've also got this alert set for all time low. Um, But you can hold that and see what happens. Maybe it'll make a higher low here. There's no reason it's not going to do again similar sort of structure to this. It makes a higher low and it does do another push. Um, maybe coming up and testing these 2 month levels up here. But really, that's there's a 2 month there. The monthly really got tested, but yeah, I mean it's really kind of a guessing game, isn't it? Like whether things are going to make a higher low or not. TROLLSOL. Another one again, I was kind of bullish on this, but bullish but a little early, it seems. So we do have take some of these zones out now. They're not really so relevant. Yeah, I think it was just a bit challenging. So we've got a 3-day demand. We've got the initial bounce off that. Unfortunately now has made a 2-day supply. I think I did notice that yesterday. I think I've got another layout. Hasn't updated the drawing. So made a 2-day supply. So again, like I can't really, at least at a minimum, this is potentially going to need more time. It has played out that 2 days and contested it and come back a little bit lower. So I guess argue it's played out the 2 days. So I've got another alert set here for longs on this 8-hour demand further deeper inside the 3-day. Yeah, this I think at this point I feel like yeah, I mean I guess it was still looking good. I think I set that alert like around here and it was still looking good. Um, but yeah, obviously just didn't hold this 4 hour. This was just 4 hour demand in here and just didn't hold it and was unable. I mean, it was not necessarily the strongest, but if it hadn't broken supply out here. Um, so yeah, this is obviously a very new coin. And it may just be at the point it's going to fall off a cliff. But yeah, that's the next zone to look at for longs. Else, I'm just going to wait and see what more we get in the local PA. Vine I spoke about a few times in my April stream, so I hope you managed to get some really nice entries on this and the detail that I gave. So we had a long from the daily down here, and then we had a really nice long retest on I think a 12-hour demand in here, and then a really great short off daily supply at the top there. Um, on the drop, obviously, it's come down again, quite high momentum. So I had an aggressive alert for 12-hour, I think, demand in there. I believe that was a 12-hour. Yeah, so obviously didn't get a bounce off there and it's come back down deeper into this 3-day below and the weekly. And then again, that's the challenge when you've got sort of chop like this. Is it going to come down deeper? So that first one's a fail, but this one's still in play, basically. I was then like watching it the last few days. Um, Before this recent drop a couple of days ago. Just set that alert, but again, I've got this in the other layout, so things are coming up in the wrong places. So I did set some alerts here looking for trend line breaks, but we weren't really getting, I said I wanted a definitive break and we didn't really get one before it then just fell off a cliff. What do we have? And yes, with the Monday PA. So at the moment we're still back up. We're still in 12-hour supply. So here I did say we are still under 12-hour supply. And again, like that's just be careful of preempting breaks of supply. Because like, yeah, I don't know, the amount of times I've got burnt by trying to kind of go, oh, this supply looks like it's going to break and then it doesn't. So be a little bit careful of that. Anyway, so we're still in 12-hour supply. We're potentially going to make a 12-hour demand, but I've drawn it in, but it might be a little bit early for that. Maybe it's an 8-hour there as well. So you can keep an eye on new demands on this. Also, again, set another alert for this trend line break. So again, I want to see a decent break and a decent retest. Because then I think this obviously has scope. It's got a daily level there to be wary of, but this has got potentially decent scope to get back up quite high in this drop. Sort of similar to this. I think I can get a similar kind of pump. So hopefully I won't miss it by, waiting for confirmation or waiting for a trend line break. If I do, then the world won't end. But yeah, so I'm still looking at that potentially for longs. And again, the risk on this is similar to something else I talked about earlier. This monthly supply from the first next C candle. But if it does run all the dailies within it, like if it can get over this level, all the dailies within it are like a choppy and it potentially can run. But is this, just going to break down from here? I'm not sure. We're still in that sideways consolidation, come up to daily supply, and it could just break down. But yeah, watch that for a scalp through there. Virtual, again, alerted 2-day supply. It's given a nice little reaction off of that level, and it's got a new weekly demand down here. Quickly, what's going on here? So it has sort of flipped weekly over to this side. This is the lower version. It's actually not the best weekly. It's an indirect. I think it's the end of the 12 hour at the level as well, which is why I've set that alert. Obviously it's a 2-day supply here, so it's not necessarily the strongest zone to look for a short. Let's have a look at the lower time frames. Yeah, new daily. I don't know. I'm torn here. Maybe I can look. I think this is. It's worth having an alert here. So again, weak supply. So I'm going to set an alert for a possible short in daily supply here. It's weak because it hasn't broken demand. So we are still holding a daily uptrend here. So we're still holding a daily uptrend. So until we break that, we're still in a daily uptrend, and even arguably we could come down into there. But this is a clean daily supply. It's had a decent drop away from it, so I think it's worth looking for a possibility of a short. If we come up into there, I don't like the sort of consolidation through here. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. And even if it just gives a drop down into this zone down here, you have to watch the 12 hour as well as the daily on that. But even if it just gives us a small scalp down to there, that would be kind of a nice trade. But yeah, just need to see what the reaction is as and when it hits that zone. That's virtual. VR. What this is. Okay, yeah, this was just something again, just broke down. So again, it was similar structures that I've seen everything else. This because it had broken KuCoin all-time low over here. It was a possibility of getting a retest, and that be a swing failure of the low. But unfortunately, it's gone back for yet another swing failure of the low. And in the meantime, has also made a weekly supply in there. So again, I'm not. This is a failed long. It's flipped back. Weekly supply might make a 2-week at the top there. So I haven't gone overly aggressive on the short re-entry, but it might just give a short. Should leave those in really. It might give a it might give a short in here now. Be conscious of the possible swing failure or stop hunt there. Maybe it's going to go up and hunt some stops higher. But yeah, look for shorts on that daily retest. I think maybe this is going to break down lower. Now it's I guess yeah. Now it hasn't survived that. Like it could be a swing failure on the higher time frame of the low, but I would like to see that weekly supply broken, and again, then I might flip to long on this. But for now, I'm still pretty short biased. Should also have a weekly level there. So yeah, that's and that sort of give the weekly level there also gives confidence to potentially looking for a short on that 2-day supply in there. What exchanges this is on? It's on Bybit and MEXC. VRA. Okay, so this is one that just is sort of just pushing. So we're not seeing many like this that are pushing. Like as I said, we've had PIVX go up into that 5-day zone up there, which I should probably alert. So this I just alerted, for the 2-month supply, and then the 3-month supply. In both cases, it's kind of gone higher. Let's re-alert here, just if we get another push on this, since it seems to be going, it's up 20% today. I've got a feeling I didn't do that before, actually. It's got a 4-day up top. Once things just start pushing up into the zones, then, kind of it's anyone's guess. It could go a lot higher if it wants to. So, I don't know if I've got the monthly level over there when you need to be there. Actually, I suppose it could be, arguably, it's a better monthly there. Yeah, maybe get a watch out for another little push on this, and then potentially look to get in shorts. But at the moment, so far it's been too early for shorts. Let's come up into a 2-weekly supply here. Just have a look at what we've got. So we may get a daily demand. We do already have a 12-hour down here. So this is going to give heaps of time anyway before giving short possibilities or anything confirmed anyway. Going to make an 8 hour demand. So yeah, I'm just, I want when something's like it's got as much momentum as this, and has just kept going after the initial pump, and is going through 2 and 3 month levels. Then yeah, I just want to see a bit more consolidation, and then those 12 hour, 8 hour, 12 hour supplies that I keep talking about be created before looking for short entries. Um, but yeah, I mean, while I haven't said that, I do certainly think you should be looking for short entries on this, but just not yet. It's not ready. Because yeah, when mostly we are seeing these things just sort of retrace massively. Um, there was one I saw that kind of ran through everything, but I really can't remember. I feel like it begins with S. I need to go back through my full list and see, some one or two things that have just run all the way up here. Um, but anyway, yeah. So continue to keep an eye on this for shorts, but yeah, just be conscious that it's not ready, and there's still other zones above. So there's a 5 day in there, there's a 3 week a little bit above that, another 3 month. There's heaps of zones. They've all, I think, most of them have been tested. Actually, yeah, that 3 week hasn't either. 5 day supply. I can put a comment on that. Maybe it's not even not tested. Just to remember that, this can still run. So those are the kind of two levels that I've been looking at. Um, in this area if we get another little push on this, but this is sort of obviously still running. And a few left. So we have WCT. So again, nice entry and a high risk entry. I think I said at the time, often there's an 8 hour demand at the bottom there. Um, and it's up and back in 3 day supply. So again, this is a difficult one. It's come through 2 day. But yeah, a difficult one. Like if you're not in this already, you can't be entering now. It's made a new daily demand in there. So that's pretty nice. So it was a very nice entry if you were in it, at the outset. If you got an entry off this daily test today, also that would have been nice, but it wasn't, I'm not alerted that. Um, and then now it just needs more time because, yeah, I don't want to be entering along right in this 3 day supply. And then, possible entries for shorts up here on 12, 8 hour, 12 hour supply there. Um, But again, this is actually kind of a nice structure. So it might, this is something that potentially could go up from here, but I would want to see it flip this 3 day. So come, close, maybe reject there, but then close above here and give some new 3, 4 day, 5 day demand, potentially 4 day. So, if we got a very strong close today, there's still 17 hours to go. If we get a very strong close above this level, then we're going to create a new 4 day demand, and then I'd be much more confident of this, and then I would look for more aggressive entries. But for now, again, still in this local downtrend, but a decent bounce off the low there. When um, I think I didn't really like this chart much when I looked at it, but it had this big pump, so I was kind of like, where do I want to short this? And then obviously I didn't want to short there. It would have been at that stage, it would have been up here. Um, and but then it started falling, so I then thought, okay, I'll put an aggressive short entry. I made a 12, sorry, a daily supply here, so that obviously gave a nice drop there. Now it's picked up this 2 week level, so it's only sort of a 2 week over here, which I don't really love. The alert for longs was on the 3 day, and then there's the 2 week demand all the way down the bottom there. Um, So yeah, with this, I just need to say a little bit more. Again, it's not something I can say in good conscience that you should long right now. I have a possible short entry on the new 2 day supply in there. So again, you can see what the reaction is there. Again, just be conscious of what the rest of the market's doing, particularly with those majors pushing quite high into the 2 day supplies. But yeah, see what happens there. It's now made a new daily demand as well. So this is lower probability. And as I said, I think in the stream yesterday, I don't like once they've done an ABC down, I'm less inclined to look for shorts on sort of, in guessing there might be a DE. It's possible. But unless it's broken demand by that point, I'm less inclined to look for shorts like this. This is a 2 day, so maybe it's worth doing. But yeah, see what happens on that. At least if it does break up, it's got a lot of space to get to the next supply, in fact. So WIZZ I talked about a little bit a minute ago. Again, like I say, I had this massive consolidation through here, and I was kind of like, I said watch this like earlier on, so that's why I said it's a little bit like TROLLSOL that I was saying around here to watch it. But then, really then it spent like 2 weeks more or a week more of just wicking around and going sideways before like eventually falling off a cliff. So now we've come back down into what's that, 2 day, 3 day demand down the bottom. It's made a new 2 day supply there. So we've got our own 5 day demand. And now we've also got a 5 day supply, a 4 day supply above it, and 3 day supply. Yeah, I just want to see this play out a little bit more. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks maybe you could look for a short and a retest up there, but I also think, when you've got this kind of fuckery, if it is encouraging everybody to long and then stopping everybody out, then it could well go back up and encourage everybody, everybody's then got a short here and then it takes them all out on the other side as well. So I'll watch that a little bit more. If you're in that long, then great. Again, just watch out for the daily supply and then just see how this develops. Maybe it's going to continue this uptrend. At least in this case, okay, we've got it's not really a downtrend as such. It's more just a sideways larger range, and it's got just need some time to figure out what it's going to do. ZKJ. Well, this is one of the charts that I've liked this chart for a really long time actually, but it never really gave me. I think it did give me actually. We did get an entry here on the monthly. Why that's not in there? Maybe I might have called it verbally rather than like putting an alert for it. So anyway, yeah. So this was one of the ones that just was going up when everything else was coming down and was holding. So when everything else was dumping for December, January, or till now, really, this was always just going sideways. So I think I spotted it around this point in time and sort of said, just keep an eye on it, see if it's going to make. I said if it's going to make a monthly demand, I remember that. And obviously, it did eventually make a monthly demand. And it took a bit quite deep down into it, but eventually pushed back up. And now it's got a 3 week sitting on top of that, and then obviously I had the 2 week alert go. But yeah, this is a pretty nice chart. If this holds. But the only downside of this chart is it's very slow. See, obviously, like it's taken a very long time doing not very much. However, I guess at least with something like this, if the market, if at least it's holding while everything else is dropping. So while it may be slow, if the whole market then gets bullish, maybe you'll find this then gets significantly faster. But anyway, that's a nice little bounce of the 2 week demand there. If it comes down a bit deeper, you can watch that 3 week and monthly level below. So just keep an eye on this area. And then potentially on 2 week supply up here if it makes it up there. So that's pretty nice chart for now. ZKJ, another aggressive, still in a downtrend, but looking for a long, so it had made a new weekly demand here. So again, worth looking for long entries. It's come down into the daily insider, got a weekly supply above, so it's got a bit of scope on this. Again, something decent if the market's going to move. That's definitely something worth keeping an eye on if the market is going to move. Again, just still in those bigger downtrends and still really being hopeful and guessing on the higher lows. So again, be conscious that we could still get a lower high in here and still drop off, but maybe we're going to get at least an ABC up to weekly supply up here. So that's sort of again something worth watching. So you can see there's very few in here that really are like overarchingly bullish. Like most of the charts are bearish, and looking for longs is high risk, not possible. So, there's a handful of bullish ones, but they don't have much history, and you can sort of argue that maybe they're being bullish, like TROLLSOL, for example. Then there's a handful of legitimately bullish ones, like we just saw with ZKJ and GOMINING, for example. So, GOMINING, it's basically made a yearly demand in here, just hiding the drawing so you can see, made a 3 month sitting on top of that, has come off it, has broken over the high. It's not ideal, but it's kind of rejecting, from a spot. So this was a rogue wick. Did I say that already? I can't remember. Yeah. So perps have actually topped out here. This alert went off for me yesterday, which drew it to my attention. However, when I looked at the perps charts, look at it quite a bit, you can see that wick doesn't exist. So the wick up into, I think it's a 5 day supply up here, all the way up there, has not happened on the perps chart. So again, I thought it was worth worth looking for longs on this still, like it's not really, well, it looks like it's been battered down, like maybe it'll come back and retest that level. Sorry, it's a weekly, not a 5-day supply there. Um, so anyway, yeah, whilst looking at that, I kind of thought, okay, well, there's a new 12-hour demand here. Let's just look in there and see what happens. It does tend to come down hard, consolidate, and then run back up again. So it's possible this has, I think it had come off slightly above that level. It's got a possible weekly in there. So again, there was other things I wanted to keep it on my radar because, if it creates a new weekly demand here, um, by the end of the week, and it has made a new 5-day. This generally is one of the more bullish charts. So it was just keeping it on my radar and keeping it on my list. So yeah, while this up move isn't as strong on perps, it's still a decent move, and again was worth looking for longs on the retest. Failing that, I guess we would be looking back down here, 4-day demand. Bring that alert down for the time being. Remember the 2-day a bit above that. So I'll probably set it on the 2-day just in case it gets that front run bounce. So 2-day/4-day demand written. Yeah, so I'd look around this area for possible long entries if it does like kind of want to drop a little bit lower. Yeah, so that's it. So trying to think of a quick summary of that really. Yeah, as I said, so like I said a minute ago, like most charts are bearish. Handful of bullish ones with either lacking history or just the odd chart that has held demand, like GOMINING and STPT was one of the other ones. Yeah, but for them, actually, no, VRA isn't exactly it's bullish on the lower time frames, but the overall chart isn't bullish. Other than that, like most charts are looking still pretty bearish. They're still in the downtrends. We've got some bigger pushes up than others. Maybe they've made it up to monthly supplies and things like that. Others are just rejecting local weekly supplies. And I think the vast majority is still in the weekly downtrend, which is what we see on others. So again, like go quickly look at that chart. It's again not surprising and kind of what we expect. While we're getting a decent push again today, we're still in this weekly downtrend. We still, at this stage, would expect to take out the low, and we're still doing like high risk long entries. Any long entries we're taking for the higher lows are still high risk. So now we're coming back up into 2-day supply in here. So again, just need to see what kind of close we get. If this tapped off, I talked about how some alts have this 3-day level slightly higher, and then this 4-day, and dailies and various throughout here. So in the case of others, it actually has bounced pretty high. And it's obviously having a strong move up today. But again, just need to see if we're going to get some sort of breakout on this. If we get a breakout and a retest, then great, we'll start becoming more biased to the long side on the alt market. But again, while we're still under weekly supply, we're still in a downtrend. Yeah, so that's kind of about it, I think. Let's go down a quick look at Bitcoin a while before I end. Okay, so we're just holding up here. Kind of annoying when it doesn't have the candles correctly because I can't judge the what supply is being formed. So Ether's still got a 30-minute demand in there, and Bitcoin started making some 15-minute supply. Because there'll be a lot of people who are waiting for a swing fail of this high, so it'd be kind of interesting to see if they get front run. That happened a few times actually on the previously. There has been other instances, I can't remember when, unfortunately, where I think CME took out the high, but Bitcoin US dollar didn't. And there were a lot of people waiting for, the swing fail of their significant level because so many people in crypto trade swing failures these days, and they just didn't get it. Might have been here actually. The other thing I was sort of considering on Bitcoin is, what's going on like over here. Like obviously we had aggressive pushes back up. We didn't have monthly supplies in this case. We had a 3-week towards the end, but we did get these 3 hits to the high is pretty common before the drop. So, but yeah, I need to see some more PA and hope it doesn't just fall off a cliff without giving new short entries. Anyway, that's an hour and a half, so I'm gonna sign off. I hope you have a good afternoon. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in what I'm doing. And any requests, obviously, as always, feel free to put them in Telegram. And I can chart whatever you like. And have a great day.